Ladies and gentlemen, as the clock continuously strikes down closer and closer to approaching December 25th, it's a deadline for many folks to try to do their best to survive the tough economic times that we're in, maintain some level of gainful employment, and try to continuously go toe to toe basically with inflation and some of the negative effects of the economy that are hurting a lot of middle class, lower income American families, hoping and praying that they just make it another day, maintaining their job and their employment and their weekly or bi-weekly paychecks. Perhaps maybe some looking for some reprieve through some form of loosened lending practices that may grant them access to some funds, perhaps maybe to buy Christmas presents, some gifts for friends and family, for the kids, hold them over for the holiday season, while knowing that, shortly thereafter, as the calendar switches over, we see an end of 2022 and the beginning of 2023, the grim realization that next year is probably going to be much tougher and harder to bear than the last. But that's not everybody. It's only a few. It's only some. Some have chosen another path. Meanwhile, others, much like their neighbors, are continuously being met with adversity and obstacles, higher prices, food insecurity, possible food shortages at home, hunger, crisis, despair, causing stress and anxiety, panic, worry, and fear. But a looming question being asked is, is my job safe? Is my income safe? Is my employment safe? And I wanted to answer some questions for the masses as the emails and questions continuously roll in. Messages on DM on Patreon, patreon.com/Kevin247. And I got a CNBC article here. It says that in the U.S., you can legally be fired for any reason or no reason at all. And let's dive into this and understand the reasons why. Obviously, this is a growing concern. It says here that tech companies have been making headlines lately for laying off hundreds and even thousands of employees. Twitter was the first, cutting hundreds of staff members overnight on November 3rd, and Meta followed suit, announcing it would cut more than 11,000 jobs. And at the end of November, DoorDash announced it would lay off another 1,250 American workers. While some workers impacted by these latest cuts could be protected by the Federal WARN Act, under which those considered to be part of a mass layoff are owed a 60-day written notice and their regular pay and benefits through that time, some may not. In fact, under the U.S.'s at-will employment system, workers have very few protections in place to both help them keep their jobs and to cushion the blow financially and emotionally should they lose their jobs. The U.S. is one of the few countries in the world with such a system. And here's how at-will employment works, why it's the de facto system in America, and how other countries handle their workforce. Now, it says here that loosely defined at-will employment means that you can be fired for any reason or no reason at all. According to Naja Farley, senior staff attorney at the National Employment Law Project, you can get fired because your boss is having a bad day, says Eric Fudali, partner and managing attorney of civil rights firm, the Bloom Firm, as an example. Because he's in a bad mood, because you didn't laugh at his joke. None of these would necessarily qualify as unlawful termination, unfair as they may seem. Likewise, you can quit for any reason, he says. Which a lot of folks perhaps maybe have considered that and decided, you know what, you can take this job and you can shove it. Which I was one several years ago. I chose to quit my job, walk away from a comfy six-figure salary, lots of perks, lots of company benefits, and venture out into the world of entrepreneurialism and entrepreneurship, uh, moving to the right hand side of the cash flow quadrant as a business owner and investor, and taking control of my life and my finances and my income. Which, if you guys care to hear that story, just let me know. I'll share the story with you guys about how I quit my job. Montana is the only state in the U.S. which is not technically at will, and employers there need to have a good cause for termination, and this is according to its Department of Labor. In 2021, however, changes were made to Montana's Wrongful Discharge from Employment Act, giving employers more leeway in this area. It says that there are several exceptions under which employees can't be fired, and here are four of the critical ones. Discrimination. Your employer cannot terminate you for being part of a protected class. They cannot terminate you based on race, color, religion, sex, including pregnancy, sexual orientation, or gender identity, national origin, age, 40 or older, disability, and genetic information, including family and medical history, according to the U.S. Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. And importantly, they also can't fire you or let you go for complaining about discrimination that wasn't directed at you. Sexual harassment included. Your employer can't fire you or let you go for rebuffing or complaining about sexual harassment, whether it happened to you or someone else. Even if that complaint turns out to be unfounded, a quote unquote a boss can't give you a quid pro quo offer of sex in exchange for your job and then fire you because you refused. Your boss can't fire you because you're being standoffish about the sexual harassment. Your boss can't be flirting with you and then fire you because you didn't respond, says Fudali. Whistleblowing is included in this list. You can't be retaliated against for whistleblowing, says Fudali, such as reporting violations of safety protocols in the workplace. Meanwhile, union membership. Many workers who are part of a union are also an exception to the at-will employment system. They bargain the contract, and that puts them into just cause employment, says Farley. This means an employer has to have an explicit reason for firing or letting them go. This is all really, really good information here. Now, it says that another component of the U.S.'s at-will employment system is that under its auspices, once an employee is terminated, their former employer does not owe them severance or any other like provisions. So this is why it's going to be important to have your savings and your investments and your other multiple diverse passive income streams coming in, folks. If you get to work at 9 and they fire you at 10, they're supposed to pay you for your hour, plus any additional hours work that you put in before that, according to Farley. But for the most part, that's all they legally owe you, no matter how long you've been there or what kind of contributions you've made. Now, here are several instances in which a company would owe a former employee severance. Folks, pay attention. Under the WARN Act, those who are part of what's categorized as either a mass layoff or a plant closing would be owed a written notice of termination 60 days ahead of it and a continuation of their pay and benefits package through that time, even if they no longer have to come into the workplace. Members of some unions may also be entitled to a severance package depending on what the union has negotiated with the employer. Meanwhile, some individual contracts may also stipulate severance, and if your contract says if you're fired within the first 6 months, you get this amount of money, you get that amount of money. Often higher level executives have such contracts. Most countries in the world do not have an at-will employment system. And when it comes to a lot of the countries in the OECD, for example, there's a lot more steps that an employer would need to go through to let a worker go. And this is according to Annelies Gogger, a fellow at the Brookings Institute. I hate butchering these names, but it says here that in Japan, for example, the ability to terminate an employee is highly restricted, and in some cases considered to be a last resort after reducing higher-ups' salaries, putting a stop to company hiring, and encouraging early retirement, according to the international employment law firm L&E Global. In New Zealand, unless in the case of serious misconduct, an employer must give an employee notice of their forthcoming termination, according to the government, which stipulates that 2 to 4 weeks' notice is often seen as fair. the employer must pay the employee until the end of their notice period. And it says that, why then is this the de facto doctrine in the United States? Well, in part, the system is a result of the very strong influence that businesses historically had on politics and legislation. According to Ludmila Praslova, professor of psychology at Vanguard University of Southern California, it gives businesses a great deal of freedom, and they've lobbied successfully to keep it. I believe that a lot of the reason why we have such an emphasis on at-will employment here is because of the history of racial discrimination and slavery, according to Farley. It's a centuries-old or centuries-long tradition of devaluing labor and laborers that impacts employer attitudes even today, she says. And finally, the U.S.'s strong individualistic culture comes into play. You have to take care of yourself, and if you succeed, you succeed. If you don't, you don't. And this is according to Praslova of how this individualism system or how this individualism plays out. There isn't very much protection for people without that philosophy, which is something I try to instill to you guys on a daily basis. And you have to take care of yourself and your family, and you have to succeed. Because with these employers and these companies and the rights and laws and political influence that they have and the lobbying that they do, if you don't succeed, you don't succeed. And it's no skin off their back, no sweat off their brow, no sleep lost for them at night. And they move on about their lives, continuously raking in ridiculous profits on the backs of the employees with typically no concern, no care, no worry in the world for these workers and their livelihoods if and when they decide to fire them for absolutely no reason at all. This is not a pitch. This is not a promotion for you guys to join the group. But if you're interested, the link is in the description. Folks, it is an important time to be taking your income and your finances and your savings and your budgeting and your business building and your income streams and your investments and everything very, very seriously. I want folks to be aware and continuously preparing for what is likely to come, more of the same, possibly much more difficult and much more painful than we've already experienced so far. And with that, it's going to come the need for folks to go out there and take control and take charge of their finances and their financial ability. If you got any questions, feel free to drop a comment down below. All the links are in the description. You guys know how to contact me. Avoid the scams and the bots in the comments and the WhatsApp numbers. It's not me. And in the meantime, you guys take care. Be safe. I'll see you on the next one.